Imagine Italy in the midst of World War II with a plan to bomb New York City. Sounds like a movie, right? Absolutely. A bold plan, almost forgotten. Today, we dive into Operation S. We will analyze original documents and a film titled Operation S. We will see how this plan was much more than just a crazy idea. Get ready, we will discover surprising details. The test pilot Niccolo Lana proposed an idea on the edge of the impossible, to bomb New York using an innovative aircraft prototype, but with a limited range.
Exactly. A round trip to New York. Impossible. How did Lana think he could do it? He was a bold man. He had an unconventional solution. You wouldn't say he planned to refuel in flight over the Atlantic, would you? No, nothing that simple. His plan was to land near a submarine. An Italian submarine, of course. Off the American coast. Incredible. The submarine would have picked up Lana and his engineer, Giovanni Casiraghi, who was also involved in the plan. A daring escape, landing in the middle of the ocean, hoping that the submarine would be there waiting for them. A crazy but brilliant idea, crazy and brilliant at the same time. And even though the idea was dismissed as feasible, it caught the attention of some high-ranking Italian army officers.
And the story gets even more interesting. Enter General Attilio Biseo, an experienced aviator who had flown with Italo Balbo. In April 1942, Biseo revisited the idea of bombing New York. Biseo saw a strategic opportunity for a surprise attack, but there was an obstacle: the lack of an aircraft carrier to launch a transatlantic mission. Impossible. So the plan was put on hold due to the lack of an aircraft carrier. Ironic, isn't it? Ironic, yes, but it highlights the limits of even the most ambitious plans. But fate had another surprise in store for Operation S. High-level meetings were held between the Navy and the Air Force. Operation S came back into the spotlight with a new protagonist, the Cant Z-511, a four-engine seaplane.
The Z seemed more realistic for such a mission, but there was a problem. The engines consumed too much. So the idea was to replace them with low-consumption models. Structural limits, but the planning continued. Meticulous calculations, evaluations, details. Captain Armando Ulivi, an experienced pilot, was tasked with evaluating the Z's autonomous conditions. They had even mapped out the route, takeoff from Brest in Brittany or Biscarrosse near Bordeaux, and then fly to New York. Drop the payload and land again near a submarine for refueling before returning to Italy. But what would they have dropped on New York? Initially, 2 bombs, but Mussolini intervened and decided on propaganda leaflets.
An unexpected choice because Mussolini feared inflaming American public opinion and alienating Italian Americans with the bombing. Exactly. Flooding New York with leaflets, a symbolic gesture to demonstrate Italy's power without causing casualties. More than an attack, it was a strong message. However, Mussolini wanted to showcase Italy's capabilities and sow some doubt, but he was cautious. He didn't want to provoke the United States. A risky but calculated strategy. However, the operation never saw the light of day. What was the problem? The Z. There was the idea, but it consumed too much fuel. A significant problem, and a different aircraft was needed to cover the distance. So, which aircraft did they choose? The Savoia Marchetti SM-95. A land-based aircraft with a range of up to 12,000 kilometers. Incredible. More than enough for a round trip to New York without refueling.
Really impressive. So they abandoned the idea of the seaplane. Yes, they decided on a more traditional aircraft. Interesting. But what made the SM-95 so special? Well, besides its range, it was a robust aircraft designed for long distances. I see. Could it carry a heavy load? Certainly. Bombs or, in this case, propaganda leaflets. So they had the right aircraft, a detailed plan, and Mussolini's approval. In the meantime, Italy surrendered in September 1943. The end of the war, and Operation S end of the game cancelled before it even started.
What a pity, after all that planning, all that preparation. And this brings us to a question. What would have happened if Operation S had been launched hypothetically? A fascinating hypothesis. What impact would it have had on the war, on the perception of the war? Good question. Hard to answer, but let's try to imagine. Imagine leaflets over New York. Mussolini wanted to influence American public opinion, but what for? Italian Americans were a large, influential community in New York, almost 10% of the population, with strong ties to Italy.
I understand. A bombing would have alienated them, while leaflets might have had an impact on their morale and loyalty. Interesting, but the United States was at war with Italy, right? It's unlikely that leaflets would have changed public opinion, but they could have fueled a sense of insecurity and vulnerability.
An attack on the heart of America, even if only symbolic, could have undermined their sense of security. Imagine the psychological impact, the enemy's power reaching into your home, even with just a paper message, a strong image. But do you think Mussolini foresaw all this? Hard to say. Maybe it was just a show of strength, a desperate attempt to make a mark in a war he was losing. Probably a mix of calculation, ambition, and illusion, as often happens in political decisions. The operation fascinates us precisely because of its ambiguity, allowing us to explore an event that never happened, and to ask ourselves what we can learn from a peace plan. An attack on the heart of America, even if only symbolic, could have undermined their sense of security. Imagine the psychological impact, the enemy's power reaching into your home, even with just a paper message, a strong image. But do you think Mussolini foresaw all this? Hard to say. Maybe it was just a show of strength, a desperate attempt.
Above all, it makes us reflect on the power of ideas, on their ability to shape the world, even when they remain only on paper. In the end, the question remains, what would have happened if the operation had been carried out? Hard to say. Impossible to know for sure, right? A hypothesis is fascinating, though. Who knows what effect the leaflets over New York would have had?
Perhaps they would have been ignored, ridiculed, or maybe they would have united Americans against a common enemy, Italy, or perhaps they would have triggered an unpredictable reaction, long-term consequences. Who can say? History is full of crossroads, of roads not taken, like an alternate reality. An unwritten story, but no less interesting. Exactly. And this brings us to another question. Tell me, what other secret plans are hidden in the archives of history?
Bold plans. Incredible like Operation S, or perhaps even more so. Who knows how many projects, how many crazy ideas given and remained secret? The history we know is just one of many possible stories, many untold stories waiting to be discovered. Mysteries of the past that still fascinate us today.
Bold choices, sometimes crazy, but always capable of changing the world. And with this reflection, we conclude our dive into Operation S, an incredible plan that made us reflect on history, its infinite possibilities, and the challenges of the future. Thank you for following us on this journey.
Thank you all for following us on this fascinating journey through Operation S. We hope you found our exploration of this bold plan and its historical implications interesting. Stay tuned for more intriguing stories and surprising discoveries. And don't forget to subscribe to our program so you don't miss any episode.